The following information is intended for educational purposes only. It is not medical advice. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect those of A Rude Awakening International nor this broadcaster. Should you choose to implement this information, please do so only with the assistance of a licensed medical professional. Neither the presenter, A Rude Awakening International, nor this broadcaster assume any responsibility for any adverse effects or consequences that may result.
Thyroid issues have become a mainstream medical issue in the last few years. Terms like Hashimoto's disease, Graves' disease, hypothyroid, hyperthyroid, thyroid storm, and tests for T3, reverse T3, T4, and more are constantly being sought, yet few people are finding solutions. So what's really going on? And what are most medical professionals missing? I'm Scott Laird, and our guest today, Dr. David Brownstein, is about to give you a health awakening.
Michael Rood's message of truth is broadcast all over the world, but none of it happens without the monthly financial support of our Ambassador Club members. And right now, membership has more benefits than ever.
I'm giving into a ministry that is helping to feed other people that have the same hunger that I do.
The Ambassador Club stands out to me because Michael brings it forth with such zeal and life and truth. Who in the world else you gonna give to get the truth out and to share it with the world?
The Ambassador Club, we were given the opportunity on a monthly basis to know that we are giving our funds to a purpose that would make a difference not only in our lives, but those around about us and in our world.
We're an ambassador because we feel like we're helping the world in a small way. And we feel so blessed that we could be a part of that.
Join now, and Michael Rood will send you the Ambassador Club Welcome Kit, an exclusive messenger bag stocked with teaching DVDs, Red Sea crossing cards to spread the word, and more. You'll also receive ambassador-only bonus gifts whenever you make a separate donation to receive the monthly love gift from A Rude Awakening International. Best of all, you'll get ambassador-only sale prices in our online bookstore several times throughout the year. Plus, exclusive invitations to Ambassador Club functions at A Rude Awakening events. Join the Ambassador Club right now. All it takes is a modest commitment of $100 per month or an annual gift of $1,200. We'll send your welcome kit right away, and you can start enjoying your love gift bonus items immediately. Call now or visit the A Rude Awakening website to join the Ambassador Club.
Welcome to the Health Awakening. I'm your host, Scott Laird. I want to thank you for joining us today and let you know that you have stumbled upon something special. This show is all about finding answers for your health, answers you won't necessarily find in mainstream media because we are approaching things from a natural point of view, working with the body in harmony with the way God intended, a biblical point of view. Now, we're not saying that all regular medical health professionals are wrong. They're usually onto something, but more often than not, they're missing something, the crucial component of understanding how God intended our bodies to work. And once you put that into consideration, you can discover answers that really work because you're working in harmony with the way the human body was intended to function, not the way human wisdom wants to dictate. One person who really understands how to approach health this way is our guest today, Dr. David Brownstein. He's a board-certified family physician and one of the foremost practitioners of holistic medicine. He is the medical director of the Center for Holistic Medicine in West Bloomfield, Michigan. And Dr. Brownstein has lectured internationally to physicians and others about his success in using natural hormones and nutritional therapies in his practice. He has written more than a dozen books, of which this is one of them here on the table. It's called Iodine, Why You Need It, Why You Can't Live Without It. And a closely related title, Overcoming Thyroid Disorders, is also another book, which is the topic of our discussion today. Dr. Brownstein joins us today from Michigan. Dr. Brownstein, welcome to the Health Awakening.
Thank you, Brett.
Hi there. So, first of all, you and I have known each other for a while now. You came to Hallelujah Acres back when I worked there, 5 years ago or so. I remember you were a guest there.
I had a wonderful trip there and met a lot of really wonderful people.
Awesome. Well, wonderful. We are glad you're here with us on the Health Awakening. Thanks for joining us. First of all, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you started? I know you started as a regular medical MD. What got you interested in holistic medicine?
I had wanted to be a physician my whole life, and I geared my undergraduate training at the University of Michigan to get into medical school and got into Wayne State University in Detroit. And I always wanted to be a family doctor. So I didn't have any leanings towards holistic medicine at that point. I'm a pretty conventional medical family. We went when we were sick and we followed the doctor's orders. We didn't take any vitamins or supplements or do anything outside of the conventional realm at that time. So when I started practicing medicine and practicing family practice, I was doing what I was taught. And somewhere around 6 months into that practice, I started to have some anxiety about what I was doing. And I wasn't quite sure what it was all about at the beginning, but after a few restless nights of sleep, I remember getting up and getting ready to go for work and telling my wife, Allison, I don't want to be a doctor anymore. Now, I had geared my whole life to becoming a doctor. We had $90,000 in student loans, and I had been doing this only 6 months. She said, well, what's wrong? And I said, I don't really know. I'm really not helping people. I'm just treating them with drugs that aren't treating the underlying cause of their illness, and then having to treat them with more drugs to treat the side effects from the first drugs. And I said, I can't do this for the next 30 to 40 years. So she said, what are you going to do about it? And I really didn't know at that point. And around that same time, a patient gave me a book called Healing with Nutrition by an allopathic doctor, Dr. Jonathan Wright. And I remember taking that book home, opening the chapter to cardiovascular disease and reading that chapter till late at night. The reason I opened that chapter to cardiovascular disease was my father was dying of heart disease at that time. He had his first heart attack, his second heart attack at age 42. Over the next 20 plus years, he had continual angina every day of his life. He was on 12 different medications to control diabetes and blood pressure. And more importantly, he looked like he would die at any moment. We were all just waiting for the phone call, when it happened. After reading that book, I called my dad in the office and I told him I wanted to draw a few blood tests on him. 2 blood tests on him. I drew his thyroid hormone levels and his testosterone level. And testosterone level read as below detectable limits. His thyroid levels were in the reference range, but in the lower part of the reference range. Based on what I read in that book, I tried my dad on 2 things. I put him on natural thyroid hormone, a little bit of natural thyroid hormone, and a small amount of natural testosterone. And within 7 days, his plus-year history of angina went away. Within 30 days, his cholesterol in the 350s fell without changing any of his bad habits. More importantly, he looked better and acted better. No longer was I expecting the phone call that he had passed away. And when I saw the changes in my dad, I knew that's what I wanted to do in medicine. And I did a 180, and I really began researching and encompassing holistic medicine. And that's where I am 20 plus years later and 13 books later.
Wow. It's an amazing story. That's usually the way it happens, isn't it? Where we have a loved one who is in trouble, or ourselves, and then we begin to change our ways and look at things. That's an amazing story.
I hear that story from so many other practitioners. It's either their illness or their family members' illness. It's not being appropriately dealt with the conventional medical model.
Well, that's how we started looking into things with changing our diet at home. And speaking of thyroid and iodine specifically, this started when my wife's got some swollen lips and her tongue swelled up. Now, thank goodness she could still breathe, but her tongue swelled up and her lips swelled up. and we went to a naturopath who told us that she had Hashimoto's disease, and we, started the whole thing of taking drugs and all that kind of thing, and we just felt like you felt with your dad, there's something not right here. There's got to be a simpler way, and I know that you've got a lot to say about iodine. We'll get into that in just a minute here, but our guest today is Dr. David Brownstein. We're talking about thyroid disorders. We have to take a short break, but stay with us. We will be right back with The Health Awakening.
The lives of Israeli victims hang critically in the balance following events of terror, violence, and war. But there's another painful problem: men, women, and children living in poverty. And you can be there for them. Visit us online at thelydiaproject.com. You'll find personal stories from the people who need you and the information you need to make a difference in their lives. When you give to the Lydia Project, you enable us to send help. Emotional and spiritual encouragement are especially needed during these critical days of recovery. Your support enables our ground team in the land of Israel to function as Yehovah intended, providing for the wounded soldiers, widows, orphans, and the poor. Help Israel. Give to the Lydia Project.
Michael Rood's Love Gift Teaching Series, The Ministry of the Messiah, is among his most popular series ever. And now there's a way to ensure you get every new episode every month. Introducing recurring love gift donations. When you set up a recurring love gift donation of just $100 per month, you'll receive every love gift every month automatically. You'll get Michael's latest teaching in the Ministry of the Messiah series and each month's bonus gift. Plus, as an exclusive extra, you can get any teaching you've missed in the entire series from the first episode to the current episode. This special offer is only for those who set up recurring love gift donations. Call now or visit the Love Gift webpage to set up your recurring love gift donation. Every teaching, every gift, every month. Plus, access to any teaching you've missed along the way. Do it now and never miss out again.
Welcome back to The Health Awakening. Now, before the break, we were talking with our guest, Dr. David Brownstein, about thyroid issues, swapping some stories. And Dr. David, I mentioned how my wife had a thyroid condition, Hashimoto's. And we were told that she should start going on Synthroid, so we did that and ended up going on iodine after researching things ourselves. And then another person told us that having iodine with Hashimoto's was like throwing gasoline on a fire. What do you make of that?
Well, that other person who told you that was probably me, because that's my quote from the first 10 years of my practice before I knew about iodine. In medical school, we were taught that there is really no need for supplemental iodine, that iodine deficiency is a thing of the past, and that iodine deficiency was cured with the advent of iodized salt in the 1920s. Well, in my research, I found all that was untrue. Iodine deficiency is not a thing of the past. In fact, the government's own studies, the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, is done on a cross-section of 10,000 Americans about every 8 to 10 years, has shown that iodine levels have fallen nearly 60% across the United States over the last 40 years, and that the majority of ours is actually iodine deficient. My research has shown that the numbers are even worse. Over 96% are iodine deficient. Iodine deficiency is not a thing of the past. It's something we're on today, and it's my premise that iodine deficiency is what's driving all the hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, and Graves' disease epidemics that we're seeing right now. You see, over the last 40 years, why iodine levels of over nearly 60%, we've seen epidemic increases of all those thyroid disorders. That, in effect, rules out iodine as a causative factor for Hashimoto's disease. So when I learned about iodine, I realized what I said before was incorrect, and I've corrected myself on that. And that's why I wrote my book, Iodine, Why You Need It, Why You Can't Live Without It.
Now, I noticed in that book, there's a recommendation in there that says, can you have too much iodine? And of course you can have too much of anything, but hypo versus hyper, everybody thinks those two are opposites as far as whether they should take iodine or not. What is the answer?
Well, let's talk about thyroid physiology for a second. So the thyroid sits in the lower part of our neck and it weighs about 1.5 ounces. This is a teaspoon of thyroid hormone for a whole year. So that little teaspoon of thyroid hormone has to drive the metabolic rate of every cell in the body 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So little variations of that teaspoon can have big effects on the body. So if we don't make enough thyroid hormone, that's hypothyroidism. Everything is underactive and slow. People are tired, they're achy, they can gain weight, their hair can fall out. The other side of the coin, if the thyroid, too much thyroid hormone, it's hyperthyroidism. And they become nervous, jittery, they can lose weight, they can lose hair as well and be fatigued. But those are two different things. We've seen epidemic increases of all the thyroid disorders, as I stated before, all the while iodine levels have fallen. And my premise is that this falling iodine level has really caused disastrous effects on our bodies, not only in the thyroid gland, but in the other areas of the body where iodine concentrates, the breasts, the ovaries, the uterus, the pancreas, and the prostate. And I think that's why we're seeing epidemic increases in cancer and other illnesses associated with all those endocrine glands.
So all of this, thyroid cancer, thyroid issues, breast cancer, you're saying, and prostate cancer, they all have a root in the thyroid and iodine for that matter.
Well, all the endocrine glands need and require iodine to function optimally. We can't make any hormones without iodine. So they have mechanisms to take iodine from lower concentrations in the bloodstream and to take iodine from the bloodstream and concentrations in their glands. The problem the last 40 years is our iodine levels have plummeted. At the same time, cancer as well as diseases of all those have skyrocketed. We have 1 in 7 women in the United States, 1 in 3 men with prostate cancer. Thyroid cancer is the fastest growing cancer. And I say the common correlation between all these is iodine deficiency.
All right, so really then taking iodine then is the answer for both hypo and hyper, getting back to that point then, really?
Well, I mean, as you said before, you can take too much of anything, including iodine. But if you don't have what's called an autonomously functioning nodule in your thyroid gland, it's a small nodule that is not in control of the body's usual thyroid control mechanisms, and it can take up too much iodine and make too much thyroid hormone and make someone hyperthyroid. That's really rare. In our practice of 3 full-time doctors over about 12 years of using iodine, we've seen a couple of patients develop this. I mean, that is way less than %, it's less than 0.1%, but it can happen. Other than that, iodine is a pretty safe nutrient for most people to take, although I would advise people to work with a healthcare professional knowledgeable about iodine and not taking it on their own.
Okay, so they shouldn't watch a show like this or watch another show and follow some kind of recommendation somebody gave on a television screen. They need to be working with a healthcare provider. Is that right?
I think it's better to have your levels measured, to have someone independent of you, viewing you, and what to do with things.
Okay. Now I know a lot of thyroid conditions are being misdiagnosed. Is that because most healthcare practitioners are not doing the right tests, or what is it?
So in medical school, I was taught to check a TSH level. It's called thyroid hormone. It's a hormone released from the pituitary gland in the brain, and it goes down to the thyroid and gives a signal to make thyroid hormone. The pituitary gland in the brain is of how much thyroid hormone T4 thyroid gland produces. So there's a negative feedback loop there that when everything's fine, you don't produce a lot of TSH, enough thyroid hormone. In the rest of the body, the pituitary is supposed to get the signal to release more TSH. So I was taught, just check a TSH level. If the TSH level is out of the reference range, they have a thyroid problem. If not, then they don't have a thyroid problem. Well, after 20 years of practicing medicine, that's not the whole story. You need to check all the thyroid hormones. You need to check thyroid antibodies. You need to check another hormone called reverse T3. And I describe all this in my book on overcoming thyroid disorders, and that's a better diagnose and find out what's going on with the thyroid gland than one test, which can miss it in a lot of people.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you. So there's a lot more involved here than one might first imagine. And we're going to talk more about this in a second. We are talking with Dr. David Brownstein, our guest today on The Health Awakening. We have to take a short break. Be with us right when we come back. 1 second. If you're like most people, watching Michael Rood's teaching on this stage was enough. You gave a donation or bought the latest teaching from A Rude Awakening International. But what happens on this stage is just the beginning. Your support does so much more. Let me show you. When you make a donation or a purchase from A Rude Awakening International, you enable us to send free teaching materials to less fortunate people all over the world. You're also helping to supply all of the materials necessary to burn the DVDs and Blu-rays and to support the people who put them all together and send them out.
In 3, 2, 1.
But before any of that can happen, your support does something else. This is our video editing and production department. Your support enables these professionals to use their talents to spread the gospel. Videos that gain and hold viewers' attention to understand the truth that they've been missing their entire lives. In fact, your donation does even more. All of the graphics you see on those videos, Michael Rood's famous biblical calendar, the newsletters you receive in the mail, and every email you receive comes from the communications department. Here too, your support enables these highly talented individuals to spread the gospel. And when you have a question about the Bible, or want to join the Ambassador Club, or just want someone to pray with, your support helps there too, employing our partner relations team, including people on the phones in North Carolina, Montana, California, and even Costa Rica. In fact, your support also empowers our entire international operations, promoting Michael's message in practically every Spanish-speaking country in the world. And it doesn't stop there. You're also enabling us to spread the truth throughout our operations in Europe and South Africa. So, the next time you make a purchase or a donation because of something you saw on this stage, remember that you're also supporting everything else that goes on backstage. Thank you for standing with us.
Thank you.
And welcome back to the Health Awakening. Before the break, we were talking with our guest, Dr. David Brownstein, about thyroid issues, the prevalence of thyroid issues, and what the deficiency in iodine can do to the entire body. We were talking about breast cancer, thyroid cancer, of course, and even prostate cancer. So, Dr. David, that begs the question, how much is the right amount of iodine to have in the body?
It's a good question, Scott. A lot of research on this. We've estimated that the Japanese ingest about 13 milligrams of iodine a day from their food supply. The U.S. ingests less than 1 milligrams a day on our food supply. The Japanese have markedly lower rates of cancers than we have. So, you know, I've made a determination that at least 12 to 13 milligrams a day should be the minimum. But I can tell you from my experience that most people seem to do their best about 25 milligrams a day. And if they have diseases of those endocrine glands, such as the thyroid, the uterus, the pancreas, or the prostate, they may need a little bit more.
Okay, all right. And again, someone should be consulting a licensed health practitioner to properly adjust those levels, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's way above the RDA for iodine, which is 150 micrograms per day. The RDA was established in the 1920s to prevent goiter or swelling of the thyroid. Back then, it was effective at doing that. And it's not quite as effective now, but it's not enough for the rest of our body. And our iodine requirements have gone up over the last, haven't gone down because of our exposure to so many, like fluoride and chlorine and perchlorate and other things that actually take iodine and wash it away from our body.
That sounds like the recommendation for vitamin D, the same thing, where before we used to be outside, an agricultural society getting plenty of sunshine, and the recommended daily allowance was 400 IU. And now we work indoors all the time and have so many stresses, and they haven't raised it very much. So it sounds like the same thing, same story.
Very similar.
Yeah, so now with thyroid and getting that tested, what kind of test should people be asking for to be informed so that they can maybe tell their doctor, hey, I want this particular test, even if you haven't thought about it?
So if you go to your doctor and you read about thyroid issues on the internet, or you read my book, and thyroid problem, and the doctor says, I'm just going to check a TSH level on you, my suggestion at that point is find a new doctor. That doctor is not enlightened and not knowledgeable enough about the thyroid, because you can't evaluate thyroid function with one single blood test. You need a complex series of blood tests that I mentioned before, including all the thyroid hormones, the thyroid antibodies, reverse T3, to fully evaluate the thyroid. I discuss all, and there are holistic doctors across the country who are knowledgeable about this, and will check the appropriate thyroid levels in you.
All right, great. Okay, now, as far as iodine goes, people might say, well, great, if I go to the grocery store, I see iodized salt. Now, I preach to people all the time, that's not what you want to look for, but let's hear it from you. What is iodized salt? Should we be using it? And if not, why not?
So iodized salt, as I mentioned, was designed in the 1920s to prevent the goiter epidemic that was affecting the Midwestern United States and the Western United States at that time. It was effective at reducing goiter rate. However, iodized salt has had all of its minerals removed, and studies have shown that only 10% of the iodine in salt is bioavailable. In our toxic world today, with our exposure to all these chemicals that cause problems with iodine in the body, our iodine requirements have gone up and not down. So I don't really recommend people use iodized salt. I do recommend them to use salt when they take iodine, because the right kind of salt can help you wash out those chemicals when iodine displaces them and they have to come out. And the right kind of salt is unrefined salt. Unrefined salt has its full complement of minerals in it. Iodized salt has no minerals in it. And iodized salt also has ferrous cyanide and aluminum silicate and a couple of other toxins that unrefined salt does not have in it.
So let me hear if I got you that. I heard that right. So iodized salt has cyanide in it?
Ferrous cyanide or toxic items added that aren't good for us. We need to stick with unrefined salt. That's how we were designed to need and require salt. We have no stores of salt in our body. We need a decent amount of salt in every day. We don't need to limit our salt intake. We need the right kind of salt in the right amounts.
Okay, so the right kind of salt here. This is the sea salt. Now this is a fairly, I don't know, it's crystallized sea salt. It's dry. It's not the best, is it? Are we supposed to look for the wet gray stuff? Is that right?
So when I talk to people about salt, I educate them that when you use the term sea salt, that's anything, because all the salt came from the oceans at some time in its life. So we want to change our terminology to refined and unrefined salt. So refined salt has no minerals in it. It's usually white because it's been bleached with chlorine derivatives. Unrefined salt has color in it because it's the minerals, wherever they got it from. So some unrefined salts are gray, some are yellow. Now I've had a couple of unrefined salts tested for the mineral and toxicity contents. And those that I've had tested include Selena's Celtic brand sea salt. I've had Redmond's real salt, and I've had salt tested. All three have tested well for the mineral content and free of toxic heavy metals in them. So those are the three that I recommend. And the Selena's Celtic salt and the Redmond's real salt are the cheapest of the three, and they work pretty efficiently in the body.
All right, great. Now, as far as iodine, we have some here from the Hallelujah Diet. They have something called nascent iodine. I hadn't heard the word nascent before. What is the difference between nascent iodine and regular iodine?
Well, iodine is iodine. Nascent iodine is just the name for the product.
Well,
it works well. I would just tell people they need to get the right amounts of iodine in.
Excellent. Thank you. Dr. David Brownstein has been our guest today. Dr. David, if people want to get your books, where do they go?
They can go to my website. It's www.drbrownstein.com. That's Dr. Brownstein, BROWNSTEIN.com.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Dr. Brownstein. We certainly appreciate it. We hope you can have you again sometime. And thank you for joining us on The Health Awakening. You can catch the replay at avivtv.com. And we will see you next time on The Health Awakening.